My name's Tim Thurston from Team I, and I'm with
Jamie Martin of Correct Careers Coaching.
And this is the next in our series of podcasts for businesses where we are discussing key issues that are affecting businesses at the current moment. Today, Jamie, what we're going to be discussing?
We're going to be discussing an integral topic, wellbeing. The scope of wellbeing is huge, and it has been more prominent in the last few years, retrospectively. But at present, I think there's going to be a bigger impact with regard to the COVID-19 situation.
Absolutely. It is very much a topical issue. How are people being affected with their well-being at the moment?
Yeah, I wanted to start with a surprising fact, really. The UK employment market is actually losing 137 million days each year due to absences. And the annual economic cost of that is around 40 billion. Now, well-being itself needs to be really focused on. And at present, I think the areas that is going to be impacting businesses and employees due to social isolation and remote working is that their routines and behaviour is going to be unusual. Now, this is going to have an impact on their anxiety because they do not know what's going to happen next with regard to their jobs, the businesses. So this is going to have an impact on their anxiety as well as stress from different ways of working, stress from having to be adaptable, and also utilising different technology that they may not have been shown or used before, which they would have done in a normal organisation in office at work. I think other areas would be definitely sleep. They may have a sleep impact due to being at home all the time, and also their routines are being adapted more so now, and definitely social connection and workplace relationships. For some individuals who are used to being in an office, used to being around a team and being so very sociable, they are not having that now during current situations. And these are the areas that are going to have an impact on well-being and potentially increase days lost each year due to absences, especially over the next few months.
I agree. I think the issue really is that well-being was a crucial factor, and there was lots and lots of examples where staff weren't fully engaged and were struggling with mental health issues, some physical issues, some issues around sleep, as you said there, lots of anxiety before the current situation with COVID-19. So this really does bring it to the fore, doesn't it, Jamie? And I think it's a question now that organisations must be thinking about this just as much as they should be thinking about their cash flow.
Yeah, 100%. And just on the sleep you mentioned there, we humans know that sleep has been a detrimental impact, if you do suffer with sleep problems. But not all of that has come to light in previous years or people talking about it. And I think it's because if you don't have the education awareness of it, and actually Team Doctor has the films on sleep to make us realise how important sleep is, what the application of sleep is, and how we can improve sleep. So yeah, you're right. In certain areas of well-being is now being more impacted, and if employers are now focusing on well-being, then it's going to have an impact on productivity of staff, but also again on their performance and cash flow. Whether it's regard to sales or tasks that need to be done within a day.
You briefly mentioned Team Doctor there. So Team Doctor is an innovative educational business, isn't it, that provides content through films that are available through an app and through a website, with the aim of being preventative and preemptive on dealing with these issues that you've raised. And there's a whole host of films that highlight the issues so that people are aware as to what the symptoms are and could be, and then give helpful tips and ideas as to how people can improve their current situation.
Yeah, and you mentioned Team Doctor. Team Doctor is an innovative platform now that is out, available. If I look back at other facts, 1 in 4 organisations don't actually monitor staff mental health. And what's your thoughts on that, Tim? Why do you think wellbeing solutions aren't in place in some organisations?
Well, I still think there's a stigma around mental health. There's a very interesting anecdote where if someone has asthma They're quite happy to say they've got asthma because no one is going to look at them sideways and see them as someone who's extremely out of the ordinary and someone to avoid. If someone then says, actually, I have mental health issues where, at times I really struggle and, I can be quite depressed, then people still seem to attach a stigma to that. And I think that's a key driver why organisations just don't have it on the radar. And we don't understand still, I don't think, in this country, that mental health affects people's well-being and engagement and productivity in the workplace just as much, in fact, if not more now, than physical well-being. So I think that light bulb moment needs to come on, and people need to start to take this issue seriously, because it's affecting the productivity of the nation, it's affecting the motivation of the workforce, and ultimately it's not going to help us get back onto an even keel in terms of growing the economy.
Yeah, that's certainly the case for some organisations there, Tim. But I think maybe a bit different for others. I think some organisations, some industries that have, implemented some wellbeing solutions because they realise that the impact it would have on their productivity and their people. And these could be industries that have been, innovative or adapting. I mean, healthcare, for example, that would be an industry, and education, that would be industries that would have wellbeing in place because they are aware of the impact it does have on their employees. And that might be because of the communication or the perception, and the self-actualization and awareness is stronger in those areas because people do talk a bit more about how they feel and how it impacts them on their workplace. But you are right, for other industries, especially in a fast-paced commercial world, industries that don't have solutions in place, and people may not, and employees may not be speaking about this as much due to, as you say, the stigma it might have on them. So if I give you an example, when I was in a fast-paced recruitment world, and I did very well in it, but now realising, looking back, that I did suffer with burnout and presenteeism. And it's something that I probably at the time didn't realise exactly what it was, and maybe I needed a bit more education on it. So again, having platforms in place that could provide these self-awareness education, like short films like you mentioned with Team Doctor, would be very useful, because if I understood it in myself, I could then make more of it aware. Not only that, I was good at my job, and I wanted to stay good at my job. So it maybe that I didn't wanted to admit I had those sorts of problems, and that it was impacting on me. But now taking more time focusing on my well-being, and having breaks away from my desk, and also having stop and start times for doing certain activities, definitely doing exercising and focusing on my nutrition, so and meditation even. So elements along those types of mindfulness and mental well-being techniques to do, I can now be more productive in the actual activity that I am doing, and being more productive. So yeah, it's a major application and impact to realise what well-being situations are being impacted, and how we can actually make that better to get an outcome. And I will say that 73% of employees do experience more poor mental health in the workplace and don't tell their managers. Now, I was a manager, and some of my staff might not feel they could come to me about these situations. So businesses really need to communicate with their staff that you can share these situations confidentially. We can provide you with wellbeing solutions to support you, because effectively, if you are not well in the workplace, then you will probably have absences which will impact the business anyway.
That's right, Jamie. And there are some very, very good businesses out there, and it's not. Our message today clearly isn't aimed at those businesses that are already doing this. It's kind of trying to make everybody aware that it's not nice to do, this is essential to do. And there's some very successful businesses. Google is probably a good example, who proclaim that they really do put the well-being of their team at the forefront of everything they do. That's what I think I'd like to see, and the message I take forward, that every organisation should do that. And we know there's a Deloitte's report saying that the return on investment for every pound that's spent, a return of at least 5 is achieved, isn't it? So it's not being benevolent. there's commercial sense in doing this.
Yeah, and if they scale that and invested in technology and certain platforms, then it would be a return of 14-1. So really, when you look at the applications available, we've mentioned Team Doctor, and there are other wellbeing. There's plenty of apps out there, but actually really having something that looks after all of your staff at once. And where they can have access to content, remotely and via various distribution channels to really support their mental health is absolutely key. I think the other areas to really think about is that there was another study done by Harvard Business Review, and they found that 20% they were more profitable with 10% higher customer reviews if companies did focus on their mental and spiritual and physical emotional well-being. I'm just going to leave a couple of top tips for employers to really communicate this with staff, and provide them with the resources or education that staff can utilize this time during social isolation. For example, mindfulness. There's an insight timer app that's very useful. Journaling is also very strong. Many coaches will say journaling is really good for your well-being. Think about your self-esteem and exercise and nutrition. And definitely some sort of meditation. There's a curiosity app that's very good for that, and also relaxation techniques to really focus on yourself during this time.
That's great. Thanks very much, Jamie.
Thanks, Tim.